thank Terry, Lincoln, and the staff here for letting us have this program here tonight. It's a real treat to be able to do it in this great venue. We've got two speakers tonight, Jim Christianson and Terry Lincoln. I'm going to introduce Jim, and then when he's done, he'll introduce Terry. I've had to introduce Jim before at a program, and it always makes me a little nervous because he's done so many things over the course of his career. It's hard to know where to start, where to end. I'll give you kind of the abbreviated version. So Jim is a native of Bismarck, attended BHS, BJC, and the University of North Dakota. He's been very active in the real estate industry in Bismarck for many, many years. He's a real estate broker. He is the president of the Northwest Realty Group. Many of you probably know he was instrumental in the redevelopment of downtown Bismarck and helped breathe new life into some of the most iconic buildings in downtown Bismarck, including the Patterson, the Depot, the Sioux Hotel, the Capitol Gallery. Aside from his professional accomplishments, he's very involved in the community. He is the chair of the Bismarck Renaissance Zone Authority. He's the chair of the Parking Authority. He's the chair of the Capitol Gallery Society. He's been very involved in promoting that wonderful art gallery in downtown Bismarck. He is a member and former president of the BSC Foundation Board of Trustees. He is also one of the founding directors of the Bismarck Historical Society. When we were founded 20 years ago, he was one of the founding members. He has served as president and treasurer of our organization. And while he doesn't today have an official title with our organization, he's still one of our biggest supporters, so we thank him for that. Most relevant to tonight's program, he is the son of Mark and Betty Christianson, who founded the Dakota Zoo. So he'll have a lot of great stories about how that came about. So thanks, Jim, for doing this. Thanks again, Terry, for having us here. Please give a warm round of applause to Jim Christianson.
I'm exhausted just listening. That's pretty good. You committed all that to memory, too.
I'm a fan.
We're going to split the show into two parts, and I'll take the first part, talk about the beginning of the zoo, and then turn it over to Terry. I'll need that. Thank you for the PowerPoint. The zoo goes back long before it opened in 1961. And just a little bit of background before we get into the slides. During World War II, my dad was a pilot, and prior to the war, he was a flight instructor. And following the war, he came home and wanted to be in the business of raising animals. And he got into the turkey business, the chicken business. Sandy Astor Highland remembers the turkey and chicken business because her parents, Bob and Marge, were in that same business back in the 50s. And then the bottom fell out of that business and left a lot of people with empty buildings, big long barns that they used to raise thousands and thousands of birds in. But even prior to that, my dad always had a pet coyote or a pet raccoon or dogs or cats around the house and around what became the Christianson farm. This is, as it says, 1956 photo aerial of the place I grew up in Northwest Bismarck, which is now occupied by a number of apartment buildings. But just to put it in perspective, this would be just to the east of the Face and Jaw Surgery Center is right here, the grocery store, which is now Family Fare, it used to be Dan's. Those buildings are just right over to the west of the Christianson farm. It was named Mary Mark Meadows after my brother and sister. I don't know, I was around in 1956, but it wasn't Mary Mark Jim. I guess it didn't sit well. The interstate highway would be to the top of this slide when it came through 6, 7, 8 years later in 1964. So if that kind of gives you an idea of where things got started. So those buildings, those long buildings were built to raise turkeys and chickens. And then after that business went away, they became ideal for boarding. We boarded dogs and cats. We boarded horses. We had horses. We had all sorts of critters, and that's the way that I grew up. I mean, I'm a zoo baby because of this facility that we're in, this beautiful zoo, but I was a zoo baby long before the zoo became a reality. By the late 1950s, we had a lot of different animals that were considered pets. We had monkeys. There was a small black bear. We had a black bear out in the front yard on a chain. Again, we had raccoons. It got to the point that the Game and Fish or other people, if they wanted to get rid of an animal, they'd bring it out to the Christianson farm, turn it over, because they knew that we would take care of it and raise it. And by the late 1950s, the The traffic out in our front yard was getting to the point where in the springtime, school buses would come out full of school kids, and they would pile out. And can we see the monkeys? Can we see the baby alligators? Can we see the snakes? People would pull up in their station wagons, and this area in our front lawn, if you will, they'd spread a blanket, open up their picnic basket, start having a picnic lunch, and then go knock on the door, and my mom's in the house. It's like, hello, can we see the animals? So at about 1958-ish, I think my folks decided that Bismarck was ready for a zoo, and maybe my mom decided that the house was ready for a zoo so the animals could live somewhere else. So 1961, the zoo officially opened in June of 61. That was really the only structure, a tiny little building that was moved here. You'll see that Volkswagen bus again in another slide. But it really was the creation of the zoo. Everybody attributed it to my dad, to Mark, and that's true. It was his vision and his effort, but it was entirely a community affair. He went to the local Elks Lodge, twisted some arms. They donated the fencing for the original elk enclosure. He went to Herman Erling, who was the head of Northern Improvement in Bismarck, and said, we need a track for the train that John Risch rides on today, right? Conductor Risch. The first oval train track that's pretty much still there was built by Northern Improvement. And Dad, it's in his memoirs. Herman said that, it's probably going to cost $2,500, Mark. He said, well, we got to have it. So Northern Improvement built it. Dad went to him for the bill. He said, Mark, we're not going to charge you for that. Don't worry about it. And that repeated itself over and over again, many times throughout the community. People donated their time, their effort, their money, their skills to help build the original zoo. And that was in 1961. So there was that Volkswagen bus. This is out in our front yard. That's my mom, Betty, with Richard the Lion-Hearted. You'll see a lot of him in the images here, as well as some of the other more famous zoo critters like Clyde the bear. But Ricky came to us from Flathead Lake, Montana, as a tiny little cub. There were 3 of them, 3 siblings. We kept him. The other 2 were sold off, some other zoo. Raised him in our house until he got to be about 5 or 6 months old. And again, my mother, being the animal lover that she was, we never had a piece of furniture in our house that was new, because the animals would chew on it, including Ricky. And that's my dad with Ricky as well. Earlier photo of Ricky, younger Ricky. And we can see the dates on the Life magazine. I've never really looked. But he was a popular cat with our entire family, including my sister, Mary, on the living room couch. So he was just a big kitty cat. I mean, when you bottle feed an animal from an early age, they obviously bond to you. So this is not Ricky. This is actually a wild mountain lion that was at the zoo here. Her name was Maja. She also came from Montana, but that is our couch in our living room. Maja had a cyst on her nose or her mouth that needed to be operated on, and they didn't have any facilities here at the zoo at the time. They do now. And the local veterinarians, if any of you are old enough like I am to remember Tom Orchard and Jim Wheeler and the Midway Vet Clinic, they're all friends of the family. They volunteered their skills for the zoo. Tom Orchard didn't want to operate on this cat because he just didn't feel comfortable, but they moved the cat to one of those barns that I showed you in the earlier photo of our place, and set up kind of a field operating table. And the surgeon on this particular case was Dr. Mike Goffner, and he's long gone as well, but he was an actual surgeon. And they operated on the cat. Cats' respiratory systems are really touchy, and they don't do well with anesthesia, so they didn't want to just take her back to the zoo and turn her loose. So they kept her in our living room. This is kind of a funny story. You see the IV line that goes up. We had a couple of rafters in our living room. We had a vaulted ceiling with rafters, so it worked pretty good for hanging the IV up there and keeping her hydrated. And everybody went to bed and everything was fine. She was knocked out. And what we all forgot was that Leo the milkman was coming the next morning about 7 a.m. Back then, we didn't have a lock on our front door. We couldn't lock it if we wanted to. The milkman would come in and go into the kitchen, which was right behind this counter, the refrigerator, and see what we needed, right? It's the way that they did it back then. And all we ever heard was a scream and a crash when he dropped everything and ran out of the house. Nobody got hurt. Cat slept through the whole thing. And they moved her back down here to the zoo where she woke up and lived the rest of her life here without the cyst on her nose. All right, then of course Clyde the bear, another infamous and famous zoo critter. And there's a few different images here that we're going to take a look at, but they're not in any chronological order because it was later that Clyde and Bonnie inhabited the same enclosure. But just to give you an idea of the perspective of this bear, and there is the redwood carving right outside this door that was done by Dave Eli, and I don't know how long ago. That's actually life size. That carving out here is done from one redwood log. At the time we moved him, he was originally in a smaller enclosure by himself, which was funded by Harold Schaefer and Gold Seal Company. And there's so many funny stories and asides, I could go all night, but when he came here as a cub from Alaska, he was flown down on a freighter by Northwest Airlines to Minneapolis. And the backstory is my dad gets a call from the big game biologist, Richardson, I think was his name. He was in Jamestown for North Dakota Game and Fish. Mark, my counterpart in Alaska, called. They've got this bear cub. This is in 1965. And the government was doing strontium-90 testing on bears in Alaska because they were still shooting off hydrogen bombs in the Pacific. And the winds aloft carry the drift over Alaska. They wanted to see how much was being absorbed by mammals. So anyway, the mother was captured. They couldn't re-release her for whatever reason. She had this cub. And so my dad gets the call and he said, "Oh yeah, we'll take him. Kodiak Alaskan brown bear, you bet." No idea where you're going to put him, right? The bear, when he arrived as I said, they flew him to Minneapolis, and he was in a pretty sturdy crate. He was just like 3 or 4 months old, but he weighed about 200 or 300 or 400 pounds, and the crate weighed another couple hundred pounds. Well, anyway, they didn't have airplanes then big enough to fly into Bismarck, so they put him on the train. So the day that he's scheduled to arrive, Dad goes downtown to Harold Schaefer's office at Gold Seal and says, "Harold, you got to come with me. I got to show you something." Says, "What is it, Mark? What is it?" "No, you got to come and see this." "Okay." So the Gold Seal office was just 2 blocks up 4th Street from the train depot, so not a big deal. And so they go, and here's this bear cub, and Harold, "Wow, that's great. Where are you going to put him?" Well, that might be nice to have an enclosure that said, "Courtesy of Gold Seal Company." And Harold being Harold, he said, "Okay, Mark, whatever you need." So my dad and the crew proceeded to build his first small enclosure. My dad, among other things, was a very good welder, builder, electrician, etc. So we moved him out of that smaller enclosure in about he was there from 1965 until about 1972 or 3. And they put him to sleep. They darted him very carefully. And when he finally slumped over, we had a sling arranged with a chain link fence with pipes, and there were 8 of us, four men on each side to haul him out by hand, then hook him up to a front end loader that I think was John Deere or one of the implement dealers provided, and they had a scale. He weighed 1,596 pounds at that time, and he continued to grow. So again, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. You gotta be careful with me up here. Bernie Kugler was a longtime volunteer of the zoo, and again, this just gives you a perspective of Clyde. That guy's 6 foot 2 inches tall. At the end of his days here, which I'll get to in a minute, he was over 2,000 pounds, and he was the largest Kodiak bear in captivity in the world. And bear people would come from all over the country and other zoos to see him and marvel at him. In the wild, the polar bears actually get bigger. They get larger and heavier than Kodiaks. So we moved him to the new enclosure. And again, these are just perspectives. Notice the photo credit. I don't see Mike here tonight, but Mike followed in his dad, Leo Lalonde's shoes as a photographer. He's taken hundreds, if not thousands, of images at the zoo.
Is that you,
What's that?
Is that you?
No, Kim, that is not me. No, I wasn't. I was working at the zoo when we moved him, but I don't think I was still working here when that was.
How did you get the picture in the enclosure?
Well, probably through through the mesh, I guess, I don't know. When he was put to sleep to be moved, that's another whole story. I mean, they closed the zoo to the public. They had the sheriff's department down here with rifles in case he escaped. Everybody wanted to be here for it, right? You know, the media was here. And they had flown in a veterinarian, Dr. Seal was his name, from, I believe, Como in St. Paul, Como Park Zoo. And this guy had successfully anesthetized over like 800 bears without a kill. Because the local vets, Tom Orchard, Jim Wheeler, those guys, they didn't want to have anything to do with putting this bear to sleep. Because if you kill him, you know, not a good thing. So it was a long, laborious, many hours process of repeatedly jabbing him before he finally tipped over. And then when he woke up, he was in his new enclosure. So, more Clyde stories. And Digital Horizons. It's a big bear. And when I worked here, we used to go in, this was the cover of obviously the phone book back in '82. We would actually go in with them every day and clean. There would always be two keepers. We'd make sure that he was laying down he had a small pool. We'd lay him down, he would lay down because we had a bucket full of donuts or sweets, and he had a horrible sweet tooth. He loves sweets. So as long as he was laying down, then the other keeper could go in over on this side. You know, everything was locked, of course, and you go in with a big bucket and a big shovel and get the worst of it out and then hose everything down every morning. But as soon as that gate would open, his head would, you know, and you would just like, okay, if he got up, you got out of there. He was very fast. It wasn't that he was mean or vicious, but he was a wild animal. So speaking of wild animals, one of the other family members, my older brother Mark, who's not with us anymore, was trying to impress his fiancée Betsy. This is about circa 1969, maybe 1970, I don't remember. This guy was probably the most fearless person I've ever known. He was a Green Beret, Special Forces, Army Ranger, 2 tours of Vietnam. Does anybody know what the animal is that he's holding? Wolverine. So Wolverine, right? So that was Angel, and she was one of 2 Wolverine cubs that again a lot of our animals came from Montana because that's where these critters are native to as well. We got 2 of them when they were little tiny bottle feeding type cubs, raised them in our house, came to the zoo. Another funny aside story, early 1970s, 72, 73, Harold and the company decided that Medora should have a small zoo of indigenous animals, you know, deer, raccoons, owls, on the way up to the amphitheater. And of course, Mark and Betty got to do that for Harold. And the Wolverines went out there that summer, and they were in an enclosure with a lid on it, with and a lock. As you can see, this is a Wolverine. It's a wild animal, but it wasn't vicious. And again, the most fearless guy I ever knew is looking a little apprehensive as he's showing off to his fiancée about holding this 45, 50-pound Wolverine. But so the 2 Wolverines are out there. One morning, the keepers come by. Somebody forgot to put the padlock on. Gates open, Wolverines are gone. This was in the fall. And nope, they're gone. You're never going to see them again, right? The next spring, they showed up here at the Dakota Zoo from Medora. They went down the Little Missouri and came back down the river bottom and spent the rest of their days here at the zoo. True story. So you hear about those things, right? With a cat that's 1,000 miles away or whatever. So anyway, that was Mark, Betsy, and Angel. Yeah, among other things, he was as I mentioned, he was an Army Ranger. He was a Ranger instructor at the Florida Ranger Camp. And he single-handedly taught the Rangers how to handle venomous snakes such as the eastern diamondback. And he's smiling. He grew up handling snakes. I mean, it just didn't bother, it didn't faze him at all. Some of these photos were actually in the Infantry Museum in Columbia, Georgia, the National Infantry Museum. They weren't the only family members that grew up with animals, right? I get on the scene here. This is 1962. I'm 10 years old. And we had moved Ricky from our house down here to the zoo. That's my sister's beagle, Ladybird. If you can read it in the back or not, the caption says, "Mountain lion from Flathead became an attraction at the Dakota Zoo in Bismarck," which is misspelled. This October 20th, 1962 photo showed the half-grown lion with friends Jim Christianson, 10, and Lady Bird, a fat 9-year-old beagle, which my sister was not happy about that. Lion was called Ricky and was almost 12 when he died. He sired 42 kittens here at the zoo. So he had a pretty good life. But yeah, in this photo, again, he was 6 months or so old, I guess, maybe 8 months. The dog didn't stay with him at the zoo. She just came down for the photo op. And went back to our place. But she actually mothered him in the house, right? So she ran the roost in the house. Lady Bird did so. And then that's Tommy and the other guy, another monkey in the zoo, circa 1972. The hippie is the one down below. Tommy was named after Tom Orchard, the vet, who actually delivered him via cesarean. So. I don't really know what the other guy is anymore, but it's not him anymore. And then I think we're going to maybe jump forward a little bit here to the 1970s. I'm not sure how that came out of the Digital Horizons. Jason downloaded that one. And then we kind of circle way back to the beginning here. The original zoo board included, my dad was the first president, but he only did that for a year, and then he wisely turned it over to Bill Eckberg, who Bill Eckberg, of course, owned and was the president and CEO of KFYR TV, KFYR Radio. Chris Dahl was a vice president at First National Bank. Some of the other board members or officers or members who aren't listed there, Harold Schaefer was on the original board, of course. Art May was on the original board. Glenn Sorley, who owned and published the Tribune. So my dad was smart enough to get these people in the media to be on his board. Harold Schaefer was on the original board. So, there was great community support, but they also had a lot of fun. I mean, it was, the zoo was a fun thing for them to do. And to this day, it still has really good board support, which I'm going to let Terry talk about here in a little bit. But I guess that's how you build a zoo. I mean, you go out and you beat the drums and shake the bushes in the community and get the clubs involved, the Rotaries and the Exchange Clubs and the Lions, et cetera, the Elks, and get people to donate. And to this day, my dad's first and constant mantra was that this zoo would be self-supporting or it wouldn't exist. It would never receive tax dollars. So to this day, it does not receive tax dollars from the city, the state, or the federal government. Never has. It's one of the few self-supporting zoos in the country. And again, Terry will talk to you about how it's grown in terms of numbers and size and all that fun stuff. So I think I got the next page on this thing. Family annual membership was $10. Pretty good deal back then. What is it now? What, 10 times that probably? I think. But Dakota National Bank. I'm sorry, I said First National for Chris Dahl. So from its humble roots and beginnings, and then I think, I don't know, this got slipped in there again. That train was built in those barns out at our farm over the course of a winter. With Crosley parts mostly from FMR Electric. Crosley was a little car, and axles, transmissions, engines all came out of Crosley's. The rest of it they fabricated and welded, painted, etc. And I just remember there was always a party out in the barn where they're working on the trains in the winter, right? They're out there drinking beer and having fun when, that's how you do it. So, Barb Olson. At the time, Al Olson was governor in North Dakota. She was on the board. So, good community support makes a good zoo. And that's a farewell picture of my dad and a couple other mountain lion cubs. I don't know who they were. So about the mid-1980s, Dad decided it was time to retire. And 1985, he was seeking a replacement director for the zoo. And he was fortunate enough to come across a young man by the name of Terry Lincoln, who was at the Sedgwick County Zoo in Wichita, Kansas at the time. Came up here and kind of fell in love with Bismarck and the zoo in North Dakota and got hired, and he's still here today, and he's here tonight. So one last thing on Clyde and my dad. My dad passed away in my dad retired in June of 1987. And within 3 days or a week or less, Clyde passed away after my dad retired. True story. Broken heart. That's all I've got for you. You got questions of me before Terry takes over? Anybody? Nope. It's all good. Come on up, Terry. Welcome, Terry Lincoln.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so many stories. I mean, Jim says he could go on all night. I could go on all night just talking about Markisms, that we call them. And so I had the pleasure of working with Mark from 1985 till 1987. I'll never forget the day he retired was June 3rd, 1987. On June 4th, actually, is when Clyde died, the very next day. So it was like, welcome to your first full day at the zoo. So it was momentous for sure. You know, it's the reason that I came here. There was a big fire. If everybody remembers that, the main building that you guys sort of walk through burned down, and so it was like, okay, that's what I saw when I came here. When my wife, who's right back there, came here. Di, say hi. She's also been here for 40 years. And so I was like 6 when we started, so that's what I like to say. But you know, in talking to Mark, I actually knew Mark because when he would come down to Kansas, and so if we had red foxes or raccoons or just really anything extra, my boss would call Mark and say, hey, you want these? And Mark would go, yeah, be there next week. And so I knew Mark. I'd talked to him 4 or 5 times, and I just thought he's like this great mysterious guy from the north. I didn't know anything about North Dakota. And so then a few years later, then my boss says, hey, Mark, you know that guy? And I go, yeah. He goes, he's looking for somebody to come up there and take over for him. And I said, oh, wow, that's cool. And so I talked to my wife, and I was an elephant keeper. We were both working in elephants in Wichita, just having a great time working at the zoo there. And so really had no intention at all of coming here, but said, hey, it's a free trip, and I've never been to North Dakota, but it's near Canada, so there must be mountains, and so let's go see it. So you remember those billboards that said North Dakota Mountain Removal Project completed? I thought, man, we just missed it. So that's kind of what we came for. But the amazing part and what really brought us here was the community support that we saw. I mean, this building was burned. Mark showed us all the videos, and the one quote that I know is still out there, somebody was interviewing him, and you know, all these horrendous shots of this building burning, and Mark said, well, you couldn't build a better bonfire. I mean, that was Mark. I mean, he just, you know, had a story for everything. And so because of that community support, we were here, I think like maybe a month or so after that fire. The building was halfway built, and there was very little insurance on it, but it was those donations that people were sending in. I think within a month they knew they had enough money to rebuild that building, which is just amazing. So that really made us think, hey, we could come here, stay for a few years, but you know, here we are 40 years later, still here. The funny thing about that is that, you know, the zoo business, there's maybe 2,000-3,000 people in North America that are in the zoo business. So I know most of them. And so Mark would say, yeah, before you came, I had this person here. And I go, well, what happened to them? Oh, I fired them. And I go, well, why? You know, I was getting kind of nervous. And he goes, oh, he just wanted to drink coffee. And I was like, okay. Check, don't drink coffee too much around Mark, you know. So it was like sort of plotting my course ahead. Who else was here, Mark? Oh, I know them. Oh, no, all she wanted to do was sit at her desk, and she was late all the time and whatever. So, okay, don't ever be late. You know? So just kind of, Mark helped me through that, charting the course to be able to stay here. So it was really, it's been a great pleasure being here. You know, the mission of the Dakota Zoo now is to instill and inspire a better understanding and appreciation for animals and nature. That's really very similar to many zoos. I mean, we talk about education, conservation, entertainment, things like that. But really, people come to the zoo to have a good time. We want them to learn something while they're here. So in 1961, as Jim said, when the zoo opened June 3rd, 15 acres, developed land, 75 mammals, 23 birds, and 40,000 people, which is a lot of people when you think about it, that first year for such a small footprint. Today now we're seeing about 150, 160,000 people. So lots more people. And that's the zoo. It's really spread out. When I first came, there was sort of this loop right here, kind of where we're at. Actually, there was a donkey pen right here where this building is at. This road kind of back to Clyde's exhibit existed, and that was it. And so it's just been really neat. We've had 3 major fundraisers through the years that allowed us to expand, to build new exhibits, and then out into the Wilderness Trail here. Of course, the penguin exhibit is up over here as well. And so it's really allowed us to expand that. And as Jim said, we are one of the few zoos in the country that are totally self-supportive, and it's folks like you that step up and help us out and allow us to do that. And so conservation is a huge thing. It's always been a big thing. Even back in the early years with Mark, he was the go-to guy for conservation. So those injured hawks and things, there really wasn't a place to go. There's no rehab centers in North Dakota except right here. This is the only rehab center in North Dakota, right here at the Dakota Zoo. And it's pretty much always been that way. So, and it's based on Mark because he was the guy that would do it. So that sort of set the track for us following in his footsteps. And so from that now a portion of our admissions goes directly to conservation. We're supporting snow leopards in the wild, tigers in the wild. We have a lot of staff that we send down to South Dakota to help spotlight black-footed ferrets. We capture them, we put microchips in, we help monitor that population, we help vaccinate for plague and things like that. So just that conservation avenue has really gone on. And again, the only raptor rehab program in the state, and it never gets old. I think we've released upwards of 100 eagles through the years, and every one is just as fascinating as the one before. So you saw that original train, and I worked on that train a lot. It was a 6-cylinder motor. I think, whatever it was to start with, it had a 6-cylinder Ford motor in it. And so I got pretty good at changing spark plugs and making the thing run. Also didn't have a gas gauge, so it ran out of gas a lot, about 2-3 times a week. And so we always had a gas can handy. And so it was a great improvement. We had a couple more trains after that. But what we have now, these are diesel engines. No more teaching kids how to drive a stick shift because one of the white train was a Volkswagen engine, stick shift. And so invariably every Sunday afternoon the train would stall on that hill over there because somebody didn't have enough run to get up the hill. And so it's great. These things they're diesel, they just chug along. And so, and then again, just like before, Herringer family, Dakota Community Bank, people are just really very helpful in supporting things at the zoo, and that's really what makes it happen. Without that, I don't know where this zoo would be. Otter exhibit. This is one of our newest exhibits, put in 2 years ago. And if you remember the old otter exhibit, it was the best exhibit around 35 years ago. We went to the Calgary Zoo. We looked at that. We copied it, and after 35 years, it's like, it's not the best anymore. I think we have a really good one now. I'm not going to call it the best, but I think it's a really good exhibit. And the reason we can say that, people love looking at it, but probably more importantly, the otters. People ask me all the time, when did you get the new otters? No, that's the female. She's 16 years old. She's been here. She used to sleep all day under a log in the old exhibit. Now she's playing in the water. It's just the habitat improvement that really helped them out. So make sure you check that out as you can. Some of our most exciting news: tiger cub born this summer, as yet unnamed. That's happening soon, and he's a ferocious little dude. We've got lots of cameras. He's actually asleep. He's got his head buried in mom, and then he's feisty. You can see. And mom's got her mouth open, showing teeth, and he doesn't care. It's like, I can take you. Of course, our African penguin exhibit is another recent addition. And between the exhibitry, and I didn't know there were so many penguin people around. I was not a penguin person. I am now. They're pretty cool, but they bite like crazy. So just to let you know that. But that sort of goes along with our conservation effort, that what can we do for these guys? It's some scientists say in 20 years these guys are going to be gone. And it's where they're at. They're from Africa, lots of oil, barge traffic, things like that. And so there doesn't take much to just wipe out that population. So we're trying to do what we can to help them out. Lots and lots of educational opportunities in this building. We've got a sloth here, and this little girl, this is last year, she dressed for Halloween, came to the zoo. She was a zookeeper. I think she had 8 sloths attached to her arms and whatever, so I think she's going to be a future zookeeper. But lots and lots of educational opportunities from animal adventures for kids of all ages, field trips, all sorts of things that are happening. Other events at the zoo, if you haven't taken the opportunity to come to a breakfast, we've got one going on Saturday. We also have a sleepover, a family campover. If you haven't stayed the night at the zoo before, it's a lot of fun. Jim showed a lot of pictures about mountain lions. That's one of the highlights, because usually the mountain lions are growling or snarling or whatever. You get to hear that all at night. And trust me, they're probably still in their exhibits when you hear that. So, but lots and lots of things. Brew at the Zoo coming up next week or tomorrow night. And so really, we try to have something for everybody. And so we're trying to market to as many different age groups as we can. And so just encourage you. If you're not a member yet, encourage you to do that. It helps us out, and you get to come to the zoo as often as you want. Okay, so this is more about the history of the zoo. I could have gone on forever about stories and things about the future of things, but does anybody have any other questions for Jim or myself? Yes?
Is there ever a thought to having one of the trains be slower and stop at some of the other exhibits?
You know, that's a great question. About every 2 or 3 years, the board gets together and we kind of talk about that. And so there's examples of zoos doing that, but what happens, the biggest problem with that is when we're busy on a Saturday, you got people lining up at the concession stand and they're waiting for that train. And so we can tell them, okay, it'll be back in about 15 minutes. And so if we're doing the stop thing, get on, get off, we sort of lose that predictability of when the train's going to go. So
You could get a limousine and have people pay.
I like that idea. Or maybe a different sort of a thing, a smaller train or something. So they'll appreciate that.
People that pay for it can tell you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a good idea. Other questions?
You do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
All right, so my dad sounded Cooper's Hawk.
Yes.
Down at the former governor's mansion the other day. Brought it in here because, like you said, there's no other rehabilitation place
Right.
in the state. And, you know, you text, you look up on the internet, you try to find what to do. Maybe you're supposed to leave it alone, I don't know. But he decided to take care. So I'm kind of curious. You have the slide up there about your raptor rehabilitation. You talked about eagles. What do you guys do for raptor rehabilitation? I mean, do you just keep them here and care for them a while? How do you decide where to release them?
So what we have a very good, Jim kind of made reference to it, we have a very good vet clinic here on site. We have x-ray, we have 2 veterinarians right now, we have a vet tech, we have staff that's been working with birds for a long, long time. This year, we probably see about 40 to 60 birds a year. This year it'll probably be more like 100. The Jamestown storm that went through there, we got 16 hawks from there. And they're all nestlings, and they're all Cooper's hawks. And so nice thing is we released 14 of them like 3 weeks later. So they grow fast. They come in, they're this tall, in 3 weeks they're this tall and they're flying. And so we just basically have to teach them how to eat and whatever. But the biggest thing is if you come across something like that, call, reach out to us. And so what we can't do, we can't fix them all. A bird comes in with a badly broken wing, we're probably going to euthanize it, but it's better than starving to death. There might be some other zoos that are looking for birds, but I can tell you they're not looking for red tails great horned owls, Cooper hawks, all the common ones. And so we just do our best to get them, if we can put them back together, sometimes even a broken bone, we can pin it, we can put it back together and get them kicked out. And many of our eagles and many of our hawks as well will release down on the reservation. Beautiful area there, and what I really like there is that the people at Standing Rock Game and Fish and the chiefs and that sort of thing, they look at those as their relatives, and so they're just like highly regarded, and so this is a great place to send these. There's lots and lots of prairie dogs and rabbits and things like that, and they're going to keep a watchful eye out in case, okay, now this bird, whatever, for whatever reason, needs help again, they're going to call us and let us know.
Do you chip them when you release them?
No, we're not allowed to chip them, and I would love to do that. We've looked at banning them, looked at chipping them, and so no, we don't do that. Yeah, we just say goodbye. We did our best for you, and good luck. So, yes.
Can you speak just briefly about the home that the BSC carpentry students built?
Oh yeah, yeah. So my wife and I live in a house right over there that the Bismarck State Carpentry class built. In fact, there's 2 houses. The next year they built the second one. And the way that came about, so when I came, I think, Jim, when you lived here, it was in a trailer with an add-on room. When we came, it was a fairly new double-wide trailer. And so we raised our 2 boys there. About the time they were out of the house, the board got money to build the house. And so it was great. And really where that came from, again, that donation that just comes from nowhere. We had a couple of folks that lived across the way that would bring watermelon rinds all the time. And so we just kind of befriended them and say, here, jump in the truck, we'll go out in the elk pen, and elk love watermelon rinds, and they love bananas too. But so we do that. They passed away a few years later, within a few months of each other, left the zoo a lot of money, and so the board said, now's the time to build those houses. So it's just, yeah, didn't take out a loan. Yes, sir.
Is Clyde buried here?
No, Clyde, so he died again in the day after my first day, full day at work. It was in June, and so he was kind of in mid-shed. And so we sent him to Jonas Brothers. If you know anything about taxidermy out of Denver, we had some folks come in and help. It was a chore. It was an all-day job to skin him. And he was a fat bear, sweet tooth. He had fat about 9 inches in the summertime, and so he was a hefty dude. And so we skinned him, sent the hide off. It came back a few months later and just had big bear patches on it. And we said, can you fix that? We had donors that were going to help finish that off. And likely he was going to go to the Heritage Center because we didn't have any place that he can go in the zoo. He's too big. So maybe it's better to have a wooden Clyde instead. Yeah. Yes.
Any idea what he weighed when he died?
Yeah, I know he was 21, 30 something was the best we could do it, because if you research Bismarck Tribune, one of the photographers got wind of Clyde dying. We had Clyde in the back of a pickup, so I was going to take him to the scales the next morning. He died late at night, and so that picture was in the front page of the paper. So I hate that picture, but yes.
Is there any animal that you want to get here that you like a wish list animal?
Some Wolverines. That's one of the ones. I love those, and we are looking at red pandas. That's another one that we're looking at. If you believe the story, there's one out there right now on the internet that we're working with the Chinese government to get pandas. Have you guys see that? That was news to me, and it's like, I don't know how many millions it takes to do that, but it's a lot. And so it's like, I don't know why somebody'd even make up that story. It's kind of funny, but no. Yes?
Do your zookeepers, do they have specialties? Like, do they work with special animals?
Yeah, they do. So when I first came, it was kind of a sexist thing. The guys did all the heavy stuff, hauling hay, and the girls chopped diets and stuff like that. And then when they were done, they went to the gift shop and worked there. And the guys would just, whatever, hang around, drink pop in the stand, probably, whatever. But and they got busier. But no, we've divided the zoo up into 3 main areas, and each area has its set of keepers. So we've got folks that work with penguins all the time, primates all the time. So we've got the exotic team, we've got the hoofstock team, and then we've got the carnivores that sort of take care of tigers and all those big meat eaters. Yes?
How many employees do you have?
We have 15 full-timers. In the summer, we bring on about 30 part-timers, and that's everything from concessions to train drivers, admissions, that sort of thing. And then tons and tons of volunteers. So just for our breakfast event, we'll probably have 40, 45 volunteers there. That a lot of them just come for that event. Children's Day, we probably have over 100, just tons of volunteers. So we're always looking for volunteers. And we're also looking for potential board members as well. So Jim talked about the fun that the board members have. And it was fun when I first came. Board met every Friday. And so imagine that. And then imagine that they met at the gourmet house. And then imagine that they had a bar. And imagine half of them getting pretty much soused during or right before your zoo board meeting. So that was the story of Mark's life and my life for a while, and some of the ideas that came out of those meetings. And, now we're going to run the trains through the elk pen, and we'll put mountain lions out there too. That was the true story. And so, yeah. So thank goodness that we built this building, and we're able to bring our board back over here without alcohol for meetings. So, yes.
Harry, you must need all different kinds of food and hard to secure.
Oh yeah.
Must be complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into diets and that sort of thing. We send keepers all the time to different, conferences and things like that. Allison just went to a nutrition conference, and so we're always, our veterinarians as well, we're always researching, what is the best diet? And so there's lots and lots of animal food companies. Missouri, when we used to have moose here, they make moose chow. There's 4 different types of primate biscuits, depending on if the animal has a tail or not. I mean, it's amazing the diversity of food, and all in the interest of meeting the needs of what the animals truly need. It is, yeah. Our food bill, probably about $85,000 a year. Yeah. I mean, think of it, each tiger eats 8-10 pounds of meat a day. That's not cheap. All that fish for the penguins.
Terry, in the old days, we'd get calls when the farmers dairy cow would pass, and we'd go pick it up and bring it down, butcher it, freeze the meat, etc., to feed it to the raptors or carnivores, etc. Is that even allowed anymore to bring in?
Yeah, it's very specific. So the deer are out with the advent of chronic wasting disease. We were asked that question, can you guarantee that animal doesn't have that? Well, no, we can't. So we don't do that anymore. Yeah, we do occasionally, but not very much. Once in a while, we really get some pretty good meat. Our staff, they spend a lot of time caring for animals, and nowadays it's not just throwing food and cleaning. There's training involved. There's enrichment. I mean, it's all about how do we make the animals have the best life that they can have. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Do you get any interns or college students studying to be zookeepers?
Yeah, thank goodness. We typically in the summer will have about 6 interns, and they come from all over. And what's really nice about that is this year we had an intern that we had an opening, and we tapped this person, hey, you just graduated, you're an intern, would you like to join us? And so that's really helpful. But as again, the zoo world is pretty small as far as people go. So I travel around to other zoos, I see them, and I see a lot of our former interns that are zookeepers now somewhere else. And so that's really cool to see that. And we realize that we're probably not a zoo that's a destination that a lot of people want to come and spend their life, unless they're from the area, whatever. But so we're in some ways a training zoo for others. And so we have a really diverse population of animals. People can come here, even interns can come here and work with a lot of different species, and then they can decide, I want to be a big cat person, whatever. And then maybe they'll go to Columbus or somewhere else from here. Go on. And yes, sir. Okay. You bet.
So, thank you all for being here. Thanks to Terry, thanks to Jim. This is really a fantastic program. Really glad we got to do it. Our next program for the Bismarck Historical Society in September will be at the Bell Mayhews Auditorium. We'll learn about the history of that great venue. That's on September 11th? 10th. And then October, what do we have on tap in
We'll
October?
be in the library.
This will be fire department.
Just in the fire department.
And then we'll have our member annual dinner in November, so look out for information for that. So thank you all for being here.